The Modern Scripture, a Zen Buddhist Bible, is brought to you by Not a Prophet org, the place on the internet to find spiritual guidance powered by artificial intelligence. Chapter VI, Transcendental Intelligence. Then said Mahamati, "Pray tell us, Blessed One, what constitutes Transcendental Intelligence?" The Blessed One replied, "Transcendental Intelligence is the inner state of self-realization, of noble wisdom. It is realized suddenly and intuitively as the turning about takes place in the deepest seat of consciousness. It neither enters nor goes out. It is like the moon seen in water." Transcendental intelligence is not subject to birth nor destruction. It has nothing to do with combination nor concordance. It is devoid of attachment and accumulation. It transcends all dualistic conceptions. When transcendental intelligence is considered, four things must be kept in mind: words, meanings, teachings, and noble wisdom, arya, prajna. Words are employed to express meanings, but they are dependent upon discriminations and memory as cause, and upon the employment of sounds or letters by which a mutual transference of meaning is possible. Words are only symbols and may or may not clearly and fully express the meaning intended, and moreover, words may be understood quite differently from what was intended by the speaker. Words are neither different nor not different from meaning, and meaning stands in the same relation to words. If meaning is different from words, it could not be made manifest by means of words. But meaning is illumined by words as things are by a lamp. Words are just like a man carrying a lamp to look for his property, by which he can say, "This is my property." Just so, by means of words and speech originating in discrimination, the Bodhisattva can enter into the meaning of the teachings of the Tathagatas, and through the meaning he can enter into exalted state of self-realization, of noble wisdom, which in itself is free from word discrimination. But if a man becomes attached to the literal meaning of words and holds fast to the illusion that words and meaning are in agreement, especially in such things as nirvana, which is born and undying, or as to distinctions of the vehicles, the five dharmas, the three self-natures, then he will fail to understand the true meaning and will become entangled in assertions and refutations. Just as varieties of objects are seen and discriminated in dreams and in visions, so ideas and statements are discriminated erroneously, and error goes on multiplying. The ignorant and simple-minded declare that meaning is not otherwise than words, that as words are, so is meaning. They think that as meaning has no body of its own, that it cannot be different from words, and therefore declare meaning to be identical with words. In this they are ignorant of the nature of words, which are subject to birth and death, whereas meaning is not. Words are dependent upon letters, and meaning is not. Meaning is apart from existence and non-existence. It has no substratum. It is unborn. The Tathagatas do not teach a dharma that is dependent upon letters. Anyone who teaches a doctrine that is dependent upon letters and words is a mere prattler, because truth is beyond letters and words and books. This does not mean that words and books never declare what is in conformity with meaning and truth, but it means that words and books are dependent upon discriminations, while meaning and truth are not. Moreover, words and books are subject to the interpretation of individual minds, while meaning and truth are not. But if truth is not expressed in words and books, the scriptures which contain the meaning of truth would disappear. And when the scriptures disappear, there will be no more disciples and masters and bodhisattvas and Buddhas, and there will be nothing to teach. But no one must become attached to the words of the scriptures, because even the canonical texts sometimes deviate from their straightforward course, owing to the imperfect functioning of sentient minds. Religious discourses are given by myself and other Tathagatas in response to the varying needs and faiths of all manner of beings, in order to free them from dependence upon the thinking function of the mind system, but they are not given to take the place of self-realization, of noble wisdom. When there is recognition that there is nothing in the world but what is seen of the mind itself, all dualistic discriminations will be discarded, and the truth of imagelessness will be understood. and will be seen to be in conformity with meaning rather than with words and letters. The ignorant and simple-minded, being fascinated with their self-imaginations and erroneous reasonings, keep on dancing and leaping about, but are unable to understand the discourse by words about the truth of self-realization. Much less are they able to understand the truth itself. Clinging to the external world, they cling to the study of books which are a means only, and do not know properly how to ascertain the truth of self-realization, which is truth unspoiled by the four propositions. Self-realization is an exalted state of inner attainment which transcends all dualistic thinking and which is above the mind system with its logic, reasoning, theorizing, and illustrations. The Tathagatas discourse to the ignorant, but sustain the bodhisattvas as they seek self-realization of noble wisdom. Therefore, let every disciple take good heed not to become attached to words as being in perfect conformity with meaning, because truth is not in the letters. When a man with his fingertip points to something to somebody, the fingertip may be mistaken for the thing pointed at. In like manner, the ignorant and simple-minded, like children, are unable even to the day of their death to abandon the idea that in the finger-tip of words there is the meaning itself. They cannot realize ultimate reality because of their intent clinging to words which were intended to be no more than a pointing finger. Words and their discrimination bind one to the dreary round of rebirths into the world of birth and death. Meaning stands alone and is a guide to nirvana. Meaning is attained by much learning, and much learning is attained by becoming conversant with meaning and not with words. Therefore, let seekers for truth reverently approach those who are wise, and avoid the sticklers for particular words. As for teachings, there are priests and popular preachers who are given to ritual and ceremony, and who are skilled in various incantations and in the art of eloquence. They should not be honored nor reverently attended upon, for what one gains from them is emotional excitement and worldly enjoyment. It is not the Dharma. Such preachers, by their clever manipulation of words and phrases and various reasonings and incantations, being the mere prattle of a child, as far as one can make out, and not at all in accordance with truth nor in unison with meaning, only serves to awaken sentiment and emotion, while it stupefies the mind. As he himself does not understand the meaning of all things, he only confuses the minds of his hearers with his dualistic views. Not understanding himself that there is nothing but what is seen of the mind, and himself attached to the notion of self, nature in external things, and unable to know one path from another, he hath no deliverance to offer others. Thus these priests and popular preachers, who are clever in various incantations, and skilled in the art of eloquence, themselves never being emancipated from such calamities as birth, old age, disease, sorrow, lamentation, pain, and despair, lead the ignorant into bewilderment by means of their various words, phrases, examples, and conclusions. Then there are the materialistic philosophers. No respect nor service is to be shown them because their teachings, though they may be explained by using hundreds of thousands of words and phrases, do not go beyond the concerns of this world and this body, and in the end they lead to suffering. As the materialists recognize no truth as existing by itself, they are split up into many schools, each of which clings to its own way of reasoning. But there is that which does not belong to materialism, and which is not reached by the knowledge of the philosophers who cling to falseness, discriminations, and erroneous reasonings because they fail to see that, fundamentally, there is no reality in external objects. When it is recognized that there is nothing beyond what is seen of the mind itself, the discrimination of being and non-being ceases, and as there is thus no external world as the object of perception, nothing remains but the solitude of reality. This does not belong to the materialistic philosophers. It is the domain of the Tathagatas. If such things are imagined as the coming and going of the mind, system, vanishing and appearing, solicitation, attachment, intense affection, a philosophic hypothesis, a theory, an abode, a sense concept, atomic attraction, organism, growth, thirst, grasping, these things belong to materialism. They are not mine. These are things that are the object of worldly interest, to be sensed, handled, and tasted. These are the things that attract one, that bind one to the external world. These are the things that appear in the elements that make up the aggregates of personality, where, owing to the procreative force of lust, there arise all kinds of disaster, birth, sorrow, lamentation, pain, despair, disease, old age, death. All these things concern worldly interests and enjoyment. They lie along the path of the philosophers, which is not the path of the Dharma. When the true egolessness of things and persons is understood, discrimination ceases to assert itself, the lower mind system ceases to function, the various bodhisattva stages are followed one after another. The bodhisattva is able to utter his 10 inexhaustible vows, and is anointed by all the Buddhas. The bodhisattva becomes master of himself and of all things by virtue of a life of spontaneous and radiant effortlessness. Thus the Dharma, which is transcendental intelligence, transcends all discriminations, all false reasonings, all philosophical systems, all dualism. Then Mahamati said to the Blessed One, in the scriptures mention is made of the womb of Tathagatahood, and it is taught that that which is born of it is by nature bright and pure, originally unspotted and endowed with the 32 marks of excellence. As it is described, it is a precious gem, but wrapped in a dirty garment, soiled by greed, anger, folly, and false imagination. We are taught that this Buddha nature immanent in everyone is eternal, unchanging, auspicious. Is not this which is born of the womb of Tathagatahood the same as the soul, substance that is taught by the philosophers? The divine Atman, as taught by them, is also claimed to be eternal, inscrutable, unchanging, imperishable. Is there or is there not a difference? The Blessed One replied, No, Mahamati, my womb of Tathagatahood is not the same as the divine Atman as taught by the philosophers. What I teach is Tathagatahood in the sense of Dharmakaya, ultimate oneness, nirvana, emptiness, unbornness, unqualifiedness, devoid of will effort. The reason why I teach the doctrine of Tathagatahood is to cause the ignorant and simple minded to lay aside their fears as they listen to the teaching of egolessness and come to understand the state of non-discrimination and imagelessness. The religious teachings of the Tathagatas are just like a potter making various vessels by his own skill of hand with the aid of rod, water, and thread, out of the one mass of clay. So the Tathagatas, by their command of skillful means issuing from noble wisdom, by various terms, expressions, and symbols, preach the twofold egolessness in order to remove the last trace of discrimination that is preventing disciples from attaining a self-realization of noble wisdom. The doctrine of the Tathagata womb is disclosed in order to awaken philosophers from their clinging to the notion of a divine Atman as transcendental personality, so that their minds that have become attached to the imaginary notion of soul as being something self-existent may be quickly awakened to a state of perfect enlightenment. All such notions as causation, succession, atoms, primary elements that make up personality, personal soul, supreme spirit, sovereign God, creator, are all figments of the imagination and manifestations of mind. No, Mahamati, the Tathagata *s doctrine of the womb of Tathagatahood is not the same as the philosopher's Atman. The Bodhisattva is said to have well grasped the teachings of the Tathagatas when, all alone in a lonely place, by means of his transcendental intelligence, he walks the path leading to nirvana. Thereon his mind will unfold by perceiving, thinking, meditating, and abiding in the practice of concentration until he attains the turning about at the source of habit energy. He will thereafter lead a life of excellent deeds. His mind concentrated on the state of Buddhahood, he will become thoroughly conversant with the noble truth of self-realization. He will become perfect master of his own mind. He will be like a gem, radiating many colors. He will be able to assume bodies of transformation. He will be able to enter into the minds of all to help them. And finally, by gradually ascending the stages, he will become established in the perfect, transcendental intelligence of the Tathagatas. Nevertheless, transcendental intelligence Arya, Jnana, is not noble wisdom Arya, Prajna itself. It is only an intuitive awareness of it. Noble wisdom is a perfect state of imagelessness. It is the womb of suchness. It is the all-conserving divine mind Alaya Vejnana, which in its pure essence forever abides in perfect patience and undisturbed tranquility. Chapter VII, Self-Realisation. Then said Mahamati, "Pray tell us, Blessed One, what is the nature of self-realization by reason of which we shall be able to attain transcendental intelligence?" The Blessed One replied, "Transcendental intelligence rises when the intellectual mind reaches its limit, and if things are to be realized in their true and essence nature, its processes of mentation, which are based on particularized ideas, discriminations, and judgments, must be transcended by an appeal to some higher faculty of cognition, if there be such a higher faculty. There is such a faculty in the intuitive mind manas, which, as we have seen, is the link between the intellectual mind and universal mind. While it is not an individualized organ like the intellectual mind, it has that which is much better, direct dependence upon universal mind. While intuition does not give information that can be analyzed and discriminated, it gives that which is far superior, self-realization through identification. Mahamati then asked the Blessed One, saying, "Pray tell us, Blessed One, what clear understandings an earnest disciple should have if he is to be successful in the discipline that leads to self-realization." The Blessed One replied, "There are 4 things by the fulfilling of which an earnest disciple may gain self-realization of noble wisdom and become a bodhisattva mahasattva. First, he must have a clear understanding that all things are only manifestations of the mind itself. Second, he must discard the notion of birth, abiding, and disappearance. Third, he must clearly understand the egolessness of both things and persons. And fourth, he must have a true conception of what constitutes self-realization of noble wisdom. Provided with these 4 understandings, earnest disciples may become bodhisattvas and attain transcendental intelligence. As to the first, he must recognize and be fully convinced that this triple world is nothing but a complex manifestation of one's mental activities, that it is devoid of selfness and its belongings, that there are no strivings, no comings, no goings. He must recognize and accept the fact that this triple world is manifested and imagined as real only under the influence of habit, energy that has been accumulated since the beginning, less passed by reason of memory, false imagination, false reasoning, and attachments to the multiplicities of objects and reactions in close relationship and in conformity to ideas of body, property, and abode. As to the second, he must recognize and be convinced that all things are to be regarded as forms seen in a vision and a dream, empty of substance, unborn and without self-nature, that all things exist only by reason of a complicated network of causation which owes its rise to discrimination and attachment, and which eventuates in the rise of the mind, system, and its belongings and evolvements. As to the third, he must recognize and patiently accept the fact that his own mind and personality is also mind, constructed, that it is empty of substance, unborn, and egoless. With these 3 things clearly in mind, the bodhisattva will be able to enter into the truth of imagelessness. As to the fourth, he must have a true conception of what constitutes self-realization of noble wisdom. First, it is not comparable to the perceptions attained by the sense, mind, neither is it comparable to the cognition of the discriminating and intellectual, mind. Both of these presuppose a difference between self and not self, and the knowledge so attained is characterized by individuality and generality. Self-realization is based on identity and oneness. There is nothing to be discriminated nor predicated concerning it. But to enter into it, the bodhisattva must be free from all presuppositions and attachments to things, ideas, and selfness. Then Mahamati said to the Blessed One, "Pray tell us, Blessed One, concerning the characteristics of deep attachments to existence, and as to how we may become detached from existence." The Blessed One replied, "When one tries to understand the significance of things by means of words and discriminations, there follow immeasurably deep, seated attachments to existence. For instance, there are the deep, seated attachments to signs of individuality, to causation, to the notion of being and non-being, to the discrimination of birth and death, of doing and not doing, to the habit of discrimination itself upon which the philosophers are so dependent. There are three attachments that are especially deep, seated in the minds of all: greed, anger, and infatuation, which are based on lust, fear, and pride. Back of these lies discrimination and desire, which is procreative, and is accompanied with excitement and avariciousness and love of comfort and desire for eternal life. And following is a succession of rebirths on the five paths of existence, and a continuation of attachments. But if these attachments are broken off, no signs of attachment nor of detachment will remain, because they are based on things that are non-existent. When this truth is clearly understood, the net of attachment is cleared away. But depending upon and attaching itself to the triple combination which works in unison, there is the rising and the continuation of the mind system incessantly functioning, and because of it there is the deeply felt and continuous assertion of the will to live. When the triple combination that causes the functioning of the mind system ceases to exist, there is the triple emancipation, and there is no further rising of any combination. When the existence and the non-existence of the external world are recognized as rising from the mind itself, then the bodhisattva is prepared to enter into the state of imagelessness, and therein see into the emptiness which characterizes all discrimination and all the deep seated attachments resulting therefrom. Therein he will see no signs of deep-rooted attachment nor detachment. Therein he will see no one in bondage and no one in emancipation, except those who themselves cherish bondage and emancipation, because in all things there is no substance to be taken hold of. But so long as these discriminations are cherished by the ignorant and simple-minded, they go on attaching themselves to them, and, like the silkworm, go on spinning their thread of discrimination and enwrapping themselves and others, and are charmed with their prison. But to the wise there are no signs of attachment nor of detachment. All things are seen as abiding in solitude, where there is no evolving of discrimination. Mahamati, you and all the bodhisattvas should have your abode where you can see all things from the view point of solitude. Mahamati, when you and other bodhisattvas understand well the distinction between attachment and detachment, you will be in possession of skillful means for avoiding becoming attached to words, according to which one proceeds to grasp meanings. Free from the domination of words, you will be able to establish yourselves where there will be a turning about, in the deepest seat of consciousness, by means of which you will attain self-realization of noble wisdom, and be able to enter into all the Buddha lands and assemblies. There you will be stamped with the stamp of the powers, self-command, the psychic faculties, and will be endowed with the wisdom and the power of the 10 inexhaustible vows, and will become radiant with the variegated rays of the transformation bodies. Therewith you will shine without effort like the moon, the sun, the magic wishing jewel, and at every stage will view things as being of perfect oneness with yourself, uncontaminated by any self-consciousness. Seeing that all things are like a dream, you will be able to enter into the stage of the Tathagatas and be able to deliver discourses on the Dharma to the world of beings in accordance with their needs, and be able to free them from all dualistic notions and false discriminations. Mahamati, there are two ways of considering self-realization, namely, the teachings about it and the realization itself. The teachings as variously given in the 9 divisions of the doctrinal works, for the instructions of those who are inclined toward it, by making use of skillful means and expedients, are intended to awaken in all beings a true perception of the Dharma. The teachings are designed to keep one away from all the dualistic notions of being and non-being and oneness and otherness. Realization itself is within the inner consciousness. It is an inner experience that has no connection with the lower mind system and its discriminations of words, ideas, and philosophical speculations. It shines out with its own clear light to reveal the error and foolishness of mind-constructed teachings, to render impotent evil influences from without, and to guide one unerringly to the realm of the good non-outflowings. Mahamati, when the earnest disciple and bodhisattva is provided with these requirements, the way is open to his perfect attainment of self-realization of noble wisdom, and to the full enjoyment of the fruits that arise therefrom. Then Mahamati asked the Blessed One, saying, "Pray tell us, Blessed One, about the one vehicle which the Blessed One has said characterizes the attainment of the inner self-realization of noble wisdom." The Blessed One replied, "In order to discard more easily discriminations and erroneous reasonings, the Bodhisattva should retire by himself to a quiet, secluded place where he may reflect within himself without relying on anyone else, and there let him exert himself to make successive advances along the stages. This solitude is the characteristic feature of the inner attainment of self-realization of noble wisdom. I call this the one vehicle, not because it is the one vehicle, but because it is only in solitude that one is able to recognize and realize the path of the one vehicle. So long as the mind is distracted and is making conscious effort, there can be no culmination as regards the various vehicles. It is only when the mind is alone and quiet that it is able to forsake the discriminations of the external world and seek realization of an inner realm where there is neither vehicle nor one who rides in it. I speak of the three vehicles in order to carry the ignorant. I do not speak much about the one vehicle, because there is no way by which earnest disciples and masters can realize nirvana unaided. According to the discourses of the Tathagatas, earnest disciples should be segregated and disciplined and trained in meditation and dhyana, whereby they are aided by many devices and expedients to realize emancipation. It is because earnest disciples and masters have not fully destroyed the habit, energy of karma, and the hindrances of discriminative knowledge and human passion that they are often unable to accept the twofold egolessness and the inconceivable transformation death, that I preach the triple vehicle and not the one vehicle. When earnest disciples have gotten rid of all their evil habit, energy, and been able to realize the twofold egolessness, then they will not be intoxicated by the bliss of the samad, his, and will be awakened into the super-realm of the good non-out flowings. Being awakened into the realm of the good non-out flowings, they will be able to gather up all the requisites for the attainment of noble wisdom, which is beyond conception, and is of sovereign power. But really, Mahamati, there are no vehicles, and so I speak of the one vehicle. Mahamati, the full recognition of the one vehicle has never been attained by either earnest disciples, masters, or even by the great Brahma. It has been attained only by the Tathagatas themselves. That is the reason that it is known as the one vehicle. I do not speak much about it because there is no way by which earnest disciples can realize nirvana unaided. Mahamati asked the Blessed One, saying, "What are the steps that will lead an awakened disciple toward the self-realization of noble wisdom?" The Blessed One replied, "The beginning lies in the recognition that the external world is only a manifestation of the activities of the mind itself, and that the mind grasps it as an external world simply because of its habit of discrimination and false reasoning. The disciple must get into the habit of looking at things truthfully. He must recognize the fact that the world has no self-nature, that it is unborn, that it is like a passing cloud, like an imaginary wheel made by a revolving firebrand, like the castle of Gandharvas, like the moon reflected in the ocean, like a vision, a mirage, a dream. He must come to understand that mind in its essence, nature, has nothing to do with discrimination nor causation. He must not listen to discourses based on the imaginary terms of qualifications. He must understand that universal mind in its pure essence is a state of imagelessness, that it is only because of the accumulated defilements on its face that body, property, and abode appear to be its manifestations, that in its own pure nature it is unaffected and unaffecting by such changes as rising, abiding, and destruction. He must fully understand that all these things come with the awakening of the notion of an ego, soul, and its conscious mind. Therefore, Mahamati, let those disciples who wish to realize noble wisdom by following the Tathagata vehicle desist from all discrimination and erroneous reasoning about such notions as the elements that make up the aggregates of personality and its sense, world, or about such ideas as causation, rising, abiding, and destruction, and exercise themselves in the discipline of dhyana that leads to the realization of noble wisdom. To practice dhyana, the earnest disciple should retire to a quiet and solitary place, remembering that lifelong habits of discriminative thinking cannot be broken off easily nor quickly. There are 4 kinds of concentrative meditation, dhyana. The dhyana practiced by the ignorant, the dhyana devoted to the examination of meaning, the dhyana with suchness, Tathata for its object, and the dhyana of the Tathagatas. The dhyana practiced by the ignorant is the one resorted to by those who are following the example of the disciples and masters, but who do not understand its purpose, and therefore it becomes still sitting with vacant minds. This dhyana is practiced also by those who, despising the body, see it as a shadow and a skeleton full of suffering and impurity, and yet who cling to the notion of an ego, seek to attain emancipation by the mere cessation of thought. The dhyana devoted to the examination of meaning is the one practiced by those who, perceiving the untenability of such ideas as self, other, and both, which are held by the philosophers, and who have passed beyond the twofold, egolessness, devote dhyana to an examination of the significance of egolessness and the differentiations of the bodhisattva stages. The dhyana with tathata, or suchness, or oneness, or the divine name, for its object is practiced by those earnest disciples and masters who, while fully recognizing the twofold egolessness and the imagelessness of tathata, yet cling to the notion of an ultimate tathata. The dhyana of the Tathagatas is the dhyana of those who are entering upon the stage of Tathagatahood, and who, abiding in the triple bliss which characterizes the self-realization of noble wisdom, are devoting themselves for the sake of all beings to the accomplishment of incomprehensible works for their emancipation. This is the pure dhyana of the Tathagatas. When all lesser things and ideas are transcended and forgotten, and there remains only a perfect state of imagelessness where Tathagata and Tathata are merged into perfect oneness, then the Buddhists will come together from all their Buddha lands, and with shining hands resting on his forehead will welcome a new Tathagata.